Hey everyone, I'm going to do a video here and talk about in vehicle and on trail communications. Um, every once in a while on social media or on the trail, there seems to be some confusion about how people are communicating and what's the best on trail communications, whether it's VHF, FRS, GMRS, CB. Uh, I get asked a lot, and gets asked a lot on social media. What is everyone using? And the short answer is everyone is just using what everyone is using. It's just like what brand winches are people using? What kind of tires are everyone using? And those answers vary depending on who you are, who your friends are, uh, social media, what you're following, where you're getting your information, what you expect to do on the trail. Just like everything else, there's multiple answers. And in this video, I want to kind of break down and show the good and the bad and talk a little about VHF, FRS, GMRS, and CB usage. Specifically as it concerns where I'm at here in Alaska, in the valley, Anchorage, the trails that we're on here. And a lot of this is going to be different depending on your location in the world. And I want to do this video specifically for this location, for the Alaska people here in the valley in Anchorage, to kind of further this discussion and get some of this information out there and show and talk about what I use and what I think is the best for trail use here in Alaska. First off, we're not talking general communication over long distances. We have cell phones for that. There's not really a need to try to get a radio system that's going to go 30, 40 miles. We have cell phones for that. And, if you want to do that, you can get your ham license, get a powerful setup. But on the trail, you know, ham radio, you're not going to be talking to other ham people on the trail. Same with on a cell phone. You're not going to be talking to everyone on the trail on a cell phone. For emergencies, for talking to people at home when you're on the trail, cell phone. It's great. It's fantastic. So I talk, ham, getting your ham license, which is VHF frequencies. You know, it's good if you're a ham operator and you're on the trail. It's nice to have that ability to reach out a longer distance with a radio to talk to somebody in times of emergency. But that's, is somebody going to be listening on one of those ham frequencies? That's a lot of equipment to have on a vehicle, expensive equipment, and what it gives you overall, I don't think is going to be any better than having a cell phone, because I've been on these trails enough to know usually if you can't make a phone call, you're not going to be able to use a radio either to call anywhere. So, ham is a separate thing. Once you understand ham, once you've tested it, got your license, it's a whole different world. And, you start to understand the limitations of everything else and how everything else kind of unfolds in front of you. General trail use, ham is not going to be it. So let's move on to VHF. VHF frequencies used to be here in Alaska, in this part of Alaska, the valley in Anchorage. 15, 20 years ago, there was some frequencies being kicked around that people were using. Fine and great for that period in time. We move forward now to 2010. The FCC has much more presence here in this part of Alaska. People are expected to follow laws and procedures and guidelines a lot more. There are many more ham operators and people who know licensing regulations and laws here in the Valley in Anchorage. And they're going to see, antennas on vehicles. They're going to see people using radios, and they're just going to be curious. They're going to want to know what other people are using. And if you're on a VHF frequency and you don't know if you're even supposed to be on it, you don't know the laws, you're probably doing something illegal, and you're going to get yourself and other people in trouble. There is no such thing as a VHF frequency that the general public is freely able to transmit on. The closest you're going to get, and I have some notes here, so I gotta look at my notes every once in a while. The closest you're going to get for VHF is private land mobile radio services. That band of frequencies. Those are licensed frequencies, meaning for you to broadcast on those, you have to have that specific license, which you're basically licensing the radio that you're using to operate on certain frequencies. And those frequencies are part of the licensing. That, a specific frequency is part of the licensing. Okay, that's great. And the law states that businesses, churches, nonprofits, it has to be an entity doing some sort of business. And the members of that entity are the ones who can get the licensing for their radios to be on that frequency. It is not a free, willy-nilly frequency band or single frequency that the general public can just get on and start talking. How does that translate to trail use? Okay. This is how I think about it. A club, a church, an organization. You're going on a trail run. You have 10 members who are legal. They have the proper licensing. They're going on that trail run. Fantastic. They can do that. You can do it, and you can enjoy it. However, you're at the trailhead, or people are messaging back and forth, social media, and you get to the trailhead. It's 10 members, and 3 other people show up, and they want to also be part of that trail experience. Or you're on the trail, and you come across others who are on the trail. Are they licensed to broadcast onto that frequency legally? If they're not, they're out of luck. You can't hand them a handheld. You can't hand them a radio and legally have them broadcasting and interacting with those radio transmissions. Only the people licensed to be on that frequency are going to be able to use that. So it takes this whole dynamic of being able to provide a non-part of that specific group, a non-member, non-person of that specific group, the ability to communicate effectively on a trail. So that's one aspect of VHF. The radios are better, of course. They can punch out further. Typically you're going to have more money into them, but the coverage is much broader. The signal is going to be much better. However, it is only good for a small licensed entity and its members. As far as those frequencies being able to be used by a greater off-road community, it is very limited. And the user has to understand that. When you get on a radio and you're broadcasting, it is up to you and the license holders to understand what you are doing legally. And the FCC does not play around. The potential of them making an example out of somebody is there. Will it ever happen? Who knows? But I'm not willing to take that risk, that liability, and neither should any of you. Only a tightly controlled group can use those VHF private land mobile radio service frequencies. Everything else is emergency government frequencies, it's ham, and you're not, that's not stuff to play around on. So that brings us to another option. FRS, GMRS. Now, FRS, GMRS are essentially the same frequencies. However, the FRS and GMRS, the difference is the allowed wattage. There's a beautiful chart. If you type in FRS, GMRS frequencies, you're looking for the updated 2017 chart. It breaks down what wattages are allowed on, I believe there's 22 standard frequency channels. Very simple chart, and it's something that you absolutely need to know for this type of communication use. The FRS is kind of the general, think CB. Really no different than CB usage. You can get on a channel as long as the radio you are using does not broadcast more than 2 watts, transmit more than 2 watts of power. Anyone can get on there. You can go to Walmart, you can buy the little walkie-talkies. They're all over the place. Sportsman Warehouse has them. Inexpensive. Buy 20 of them at one time if you want. Pre-programmed. You jump on channel 20, more than able to talk and say whatever you want at 2 watts, which is pretty good. Probably better than your CB is going to be on a trail. And inexpensive. And capable of communicating with GMRS, which is essentially the same thing, just a higher wattage. So you can have a GMRS mounted radio inside your rig with, and here's the difference, the GMRS to transmit the higher wattage, you need the FCC license, which is less than $100, I believe. I can't remember. Good for 10 years, and it covers your immediate family. So you're riding in your rig, your kids can get on your radio. It's not restricted to one individual, it's family. So now you've opened up some more possibilities. You're able to transmit at 50 watts, which we got to remember, an increase in wattage does not exactly mean an increase in power, transmitting power, distance, and everything like that. It's better to have higher wattage, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're transmitting further different distances, especially when you're talking UHF. VHF is one thing. FRS, GMRS frequencies fall under UHF. Is it better at 2 watts than a CB? You bet. Is it better at 50 watts than what your CB? Absolutely. And the cost for a dash-mounted GMRS capable radio is going to be same as what you're paying for a CB, a good quality CB setup. So already we're kind of comparing this to CBUs, and that's because there's still quite a bit of CBUs here in this part of Alaska. Different entities and different people have bought into the CBS or the CB usage. I think FRS GMRS is much better, and one of the biggest points of that is this right here. I can use a handheld. This is a Baofeng, however you say it, Baofeng, Chinese, they're cheap, regulated now, and as of this month, I think they're severely regulated, so the usage of these may go away. I'm not telling you to use these. You have to do your own research. But I'm using this as an example of the benefits of FRS GMRS. Okay. I have my dash mounted radio in my rig. Same thing. Let's use the same scenario. 10 people. We show up to a trail run. 5 other people show up. Hey, how are we all going to communicate? Well, hey, these handhelds are cheap. I just happen to have some extra. Here you go. You don't have the GMRS license, but you can still legally talk to me on channel 20 and other shared channels according to that chart. And as long as the handheld is 2 watts or lower. Once again, it's up to the user and up to the person buying them to make sure you've got handhelds that are compliant. What you're looking for, if you're not GMRS licensed, is the cheap Walmart Sportsman Warehouse handhelds at 2 watts. Are they still going to be good on the trail? Absolutely. They're even the cheap ones are as good as a CB for trail usage. You're within a mile, of other users on the trail. Are you going to be able to talk to Anchorage from the valley? No, that's not the intended purpose. It's trail usage. If you want to talk to people longer distance, call them on the phone. When there's groups, when there's trails, boom. You got your cheap handheld that you can hand to friends, hand to other people who showed up. Have your co-driver, have any people that are with you. They can communicate. They can hear what's going on. You have one. You step away from your vehicle. You're still in constant communication. You're not tethered to sit in your vehicle. And cost-wise, for a handheld, a good setup GMRS capable setup mounted in, you're going to pay just about the same as what you're paying for a CB. Currently, Midland makes some excellent radios. You get on Amazon, you can find one by BTEC, which is a Chinese company. And those are going to be FCC compliant. And what you're looking for is to stay within those FCC regulations. So you got to do a little bit of research, nothing difficult. And this month of this year, I believe the FCC is changing their rules as far as manufacturing and sales in the U.S. market is concerned. So the Chinese companies and all the other manufacturers are going to have to make their radios more compliant with what the FCC wants. And I think that has to do with FRS GMRS specifically. So right now, Midland and BTEC, I think, are the only 2 manufacturers of the FCC compliant stuff. But here going into the future, those other manufacturers are definitely getting on board and going to be producing more and better radios as this market picks up. And the reason the market's picking up is 3 years ago, the FCC changed their allowed wattage usage for FRS GMRS. 4, 5, 6 years ago, it wasn't that great. It was restricted to like half a watt FRS, worse than a CB. Now, they're compatible and better than the CB powers. So, just that alone, the ability to communicate with a handheld that you can hand out to other people on the trail that are cheap, just as user-friendly, is a huge plus. The interesting things I'm seeing out on trails right now is the CB users that have a couple $100 into their CB setups. Guess what? They also are carrying FRS handhelds to talk when they get out of the vehicle or to hand to people who don't have the CBs. And it's mind-numbing. I'm watching people have trying to use 2 different forms of communication that aren't compatible. You cannot have a handheld and talk with CB. They are not compatible. And it's you're never going to have a good economical handheld CB. It's not going to happen. They're crap. Handheld CBs are crap. It's not even something that should even be talked about. So you start talking about CB, and a lot of people got on that bandwagon a couple years ago, and they're using it, and it's worked well for them. But now I'm starting to see more and more using the handhelds, which is a completely incompatible form of communication. So now they're carrying two different forms of communication. When get rid of the CB, get the GMRS, do a little bit of research, and make everything compatible. That way, everyone is on the same playing field when it comes to communications. Legally, you can just tell somebody channel 20, jump on it. Doesn't matter if you don't have the license, as long as you got a 2-watt or below transmitting power radio, you're good to go. And on the trail, it's all you're going to need. The guys that want the bigger radios to punch through the woods a little further, want the mobile stuff, sure, get the GMRS license and get the bigger wattage radios. Midland makes a 15-watt, very economical, small, compact size, fits great in ATVs. All sorts of people are using. I see them on the trail right now. However, those users probably don't have the GMRS licenses to be operating those at the higher wattages. So there is a little bit of buyer understanding that needs to happen to make sure that you're using it legally and responsibly. Let me check my notes. And yeah, I don't want to drag this out too much longer. 22 minutes, not bad, but I think I've covered the basics. Basically, moving forward, it's my belief, and who am I? Who cares? But I've seen enough people on trails. I've been in those situations, organize a trail run, knowing that not everyone's going to have the same communication. So it's nice to have the ability to hand somebody a small, cheap handheld and have them being able to communicate with everyone else in the group. And if they don't give me the radio back, hey, all right, I'm not really out. My handhelds are kind of expensive, but they don't have to be. You can hand out cheap ones and not be out big money if they get damaged, if their dog eats it, whatever, inside the vehicle. It adds to a safer overall communication and trail experience. So basically, VHF is good if you have the licensing and you are a small organization, a small group, and you're not expecting non-licensed people to show up, and be able to communicate, because it's not going to happen. They can, they're not going to be legal, that's on them. But same thing, does some of that liability fall to the group? If you're handing them the radio, if you're telling them the frequency, FCC is going to go after intent. Did you intend to mislead them? Did you intend to do something that the FCC frowns upon? And their lawyers are probably going to be better than yours. So why even worry about it? Basically, the only thing you're losing by not going VHF is distance. Well, on trail, does that distance and that ability really matter as far as you're transmitting? Not so much when you got a cell phone. You've equalized that out. So for ease of use, affordability, something that the general public can use and not have to be worried about legalities and having to hire a lawyer to even figure it all out, FRS, GMRS is better than CBs and FRS. At this point, I'm not even talking about FRS anymore. The debate is between CBs and FRS or VH. I'm not talking VHF anymore. Sorry. The debate is between CB, FRS, GMRS. And for right now, and then going into the future, we have better options with the FRS, GMRS. Sure, you have to buy the license. Okay, add that into your cost of the radio of a handheld. You're still really close to most people's CB setups. Okay, and you also have the ability to use a handheld to walk away from your vehicle. You know, your family can jump on there, everything. So I hope that kind of clears everything up a little bit at least, so there's not so much confusion. And the next time people ask, I'm just going to refer them to this video, and hopefully, you know, people can look at some of this information and decide what they're going to do and pass some of this on to other members of the off-road community to get more cohesive, to better communicate, better safety on the trail, and all of it. So thanks for your time. See you on the trails.